All right, let's get started. So the first thing is we're of course working from back of the fly to front, just like anything else out there. First thing we're going to do is grab a little bit of the Arctic Fox, and I use the offset color that I tend to run. Uh, the front, I'm going to have more dominant in red, and the back, I'm going to have more dominant in orange. So all I'm doing is creating a little bit of a tag here at the end here, just a couple of wraps to the back. So we're creating that that first station, if you will. Um, Clip off that excess, and the next thing we're going to do is grab some of that flash, and this just adds a little more waviness. I probably overdress my flies. I have friends out there who always tell me that, hey, why don't you try the same fly, but with half the materials? Shout out to Matt Clara out there. Um, but it's caused me to learn about what is really needed and what is something that is maybe just extra and kind of superfluous to actually the construction of the fly. So that's the back station right there. All we're doing here is creating that. So we've got a little bit of the Arctic Fox, a little bit of the flash, mashing everything down. And then one of the most utilitarian materials that I love to use is so much, especially in steelhead bug construction, is diamond flat braid. So we're just going to lay a little bit on the tube, wrap that in, and then I come up to approximately just a little bit before the head of the tube where I burn back the tube a little bit to create a head, and so that'll allow me to start working on that second station, if you will. All right, so we're going to start wrapping this forward, making sure that it looks pretty. Because we're not fishing pretty flies for steelhead, what are we doing, right? Just gotta finish that off. You know, you could probably just clip that off right there, the extra stuff that it's sitting there, but who cares at that point? One of the other things I'm going to grab real quick, and I apologize because I didn't have this right at the time, but I'm just going to grab some dub. It doesn't even matter. I mean, you can whatever palette you want. All you're doing here is creating that bump for the dubbing bump to allow it to for the materials to flare for that teardrop stuff that we're looking for on a front end of a steelhead fly. So all we're doing is just creating a little double. You could put black or pink or whatever right there. At this point, it doesn't matter. All we're doing again is just creating that little bit of a dubbing bump. So we've got a little gap in between, if you can see, from the dubbing bump here is, maybe a millimeter or so. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to grab some of this EP anadromous brush, and I'm a huge fan of this stuff because it just saves so much time. And it looks great in the water and moves. So just grab it by that wire, clip off that extra junk that we're not dealing with right there. And then we're just going to wrap this a couple of times. It doesn't need a lot because you're just providing the base point in which that body material. I found this fly to work really, really well also for trout. You just need to size her down a little bit depending on where you're swinging at and what the color palette you want to go with. The same principle of the fly will hold true for the entire um, anadromous fish and or trout palette that you're looking for. Use this fly very well in Missouri on a sink tip, and that's worked very well. Next thing you want to do is just want to come in here and pick out this anadromous brush as best you possibly can, because it does tend to sit on itself a little bit when you're wrapping it in, and it's pretty critical to come in and just kind of pull through it a little bit and make sure that you don't have any stuff binding on yourself, kind of creating an unevenness of the fly. And now you can kind of see we're already starting to get that shape that we're looking for. And really, this fly, it doesn't take much to get right, and it doesn't create like 50 different ways you have to do certain things. It's pretty rad in how fast you can tie it. And here's the kind of that finished look you're looking for This is one of the flies that is produced by Umpqua based off my pattern, so it's going to look a little bit different, right? But then what I'm going to do is create the overwing now. So I've got a piece of fox here, and I'm going to pull out some of those guard hairs to get rid of some of the extra bulk that we don't really need. So kind of right now we have that dominant orange pattern, right? And we're just going to tie in. Oh, you know what? That piece just did not do the trick, and no sense going further without having the materials you actually want. So I'm going to grab my fox again and look for that piece that screams out to me and said, "Hey, I want to be part of your fly." So again, trying to take out some of those little itty bitty guard hairs, just like it is in any kind of like. So yeah, we're getting rid of some of this stuff. And then I like to twist it a little bit just to kind of bind it a little bit better. Actually, you know what? I think I need to take a little bit more guard hair out of there. And I like to twist it a little bit just so it kind of forms a little bit better for itself. So creating that overwing. So you can see we're starting to get it there. Trying to clip off that excess. Because we've got to have a home for our muddler head later on. Now I'm going to come with the contrasting red, and I got to tell you, red over orange is my #1 color palette for summer run steelhead for tip bugs. That should say, stuff when you're running on a sink tip. A lot of confidence in that, and then what I'm kind of trying to do is use the old saliva to kind of pull it back and kind of make sure we're getting that kind of form we're looking for. I'm taking some inspiration out of some of those Scandinavian tyers out there who, whether it be a Sunray or anything like that, that uses this fox. I think it's just phenomenal material. And I love using it. So at that point, I'm going to grab some more of my flash, maybe 5 or 6 strands, maybe 4 strands, something of that nature. Not anything massive in terms of clump, maybe something like that. And this just adds more wiggle to the waggle. And I'm going to lay that right on the top of the overwing. Oop, that decided to slide a little bit. You can see we're starting to get where we want to be. So much I find is just manipulation of materials where you want them to sit and making sure that they're secured fastly. And that's like 90% of the job, right? So at that point, we've got that. And then I had just set down. Weird. The fly bench eats stuff. That never happens before. And then I'm going to grab some Amherst, which I neglected to say earlier, but it's kind of a key option. I think that adds a little more contrast. So we're going to grab some of the longest fibers we possibly can grab off your Amherst. And then some people like to, this is my operation. I just clump time. I just grab one, throw a wrap, and just repeat it kind of on a spaced out process, a basis across the width of the fly. There's probably some sort of more technical way to do this, but I've always just run it this way and it works just fine. This year's been a tough year for steelhead. I fished one day because our runs on the Columbia are so bad, worse than 75 years. So it's been a really mentally trying year to be a steelheader. And if I encourage you guys anywhere out there, if you can find a group or a cause that is near and dear to your heart, whether it's steelhead or striped bass or whatever it is out there, and make sure you're dedicating a bit of your time towards solutions. I am myself a long-term member of a board member of the Wild Steelhead Coalition, and we're working hard out there. Um, I'm also work for Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, which is dedicated to the wild public lands, waters, and wildlife of our country. And whatever makes your heart sing, I highly encourage you to go find that organization or cause that will help you help just be a helper. Find a way to find a cause or something out there that you can provide impact for. And I think that's just going to make how you work and go in and out of the outdoors, being a person who adds to solutions. And I think that's just going to be a huge thing for overall of how we make our sport last into the next century and beyond. So, going to grab a deer hair, and I'm going to find the thickest, the biggest fibers I possibly can, and grab my scissors and get in there and find a good clump to work with. So we've got a big old clump here, right? And so then I just start paring it down. And one of the tools that I love the most, and this is straight from the dollar store, is a cat brush. Because some of this guard fur that we're dealing with out of especially a healthy mature mule deer, it'll mess you up. So I just run it across this a couple of times, and voila, the majority of the guard hair is out. So then we're dealing just exactly the only things that we're looking for right here. So, and what you want to do, and I use this method that uses just one clump around the head for the muddler. Some people like to do, multiple clumps and stuff like that, but I think this method that I've chanced in on, and I tend to not chanced in on, but I learned tends to work pretty dang well. I don't really stack it here and try to get perfect. Just about something in that range will be just fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it on the head here. And then I'm going to take a couple of loose wraps just to kind of seat it a little bit. 1, 2. And then what I'm going to do is take the old thumb and really work. And as I continue to apply pressure with the thread base, but I want to just kind of work that head. So what I'm dealing with here is that it gets kind of almost full coverage at that point, and we're able to use just one clump of deer. Doesn't have to be perfect. The only thing perfect flies catch are fishermen. So I'm going to apply as much pressure on this and see if I can probably not deal with a thread break right now, because I'm pretty good at doing that myself. Okay, so now once we get our first bases and the tips are out here, I'm just going to use my thumb and my forefinger, and I'm going to press it back a little bit and just work it back so I can get that edge of the tube, which I've burned back, exposed again. And then I'm going to wrap in front to create a little bit of a base. This is the trickiest part of the whole fly, right? How can I create that base, but also not overcrowd the ever-loving crap out of it, so I can't use my whip finish to finish off the fly. So we're 99% done at this point, but this is kind of the more critical portion of the fly. The form and everything that we are looking for is there. Now we just got to make it look pretty. So at this point, you can grab your favorite pair of scissors. And I used to spend all this time intricately manicuring these heads. And then one time I go out steelhead fishing with my dad, and he pulls this muddler out that he tied, and it looked like a kid with safety scissors in the second grade manicured the head. I mean, it was just crazy. And that's where I learned my lesson of dirty head muddlers. They tend to work really well because I have this I've taken razor blades. Granted, I use razor blades quite a bit. I'd taken all this time to create this very beautiful, not a hair out of place muddler. And of course, my dad with the chopped up, nasty looking, buggy looking muddler. He's the one who caught the fish. So Okay, so at this point, we're essentially done. And if you can get a little closer in on this fly, oh, sorry for the focus. We'll come a little closer here. I'll show you some what we're looking for there. But anyways, the fly's done. So now I'm going to really work to create and make sure that I can get a space in here to whip finish. Grab my whip finish tool because I don't know the other way. Failure on my part. Work everything I can to try and not get those tips that have created the muddler head ingrained into. It's hard not to wrap the thread around the tips, but there is your Studler. And so the other key thing in this bug, as I found, is that one of the issues that I've had with tube flies is that, a lot of times you're running your owner SSWs, and you notice that an owner SSW, this is not an owner. This is the hook I like to use. This is a Gamakatsu drop shot hook, which you can see has a flat tie-in right here, head of the hook. The owner SSW or other ones that we use in our intruders have it canters up a little bit more, so it tends to sit weird in the tube. This flat Gamakatsu drop shot hook, which this one is a size 1, sits in the back of the tube beautifully and creates a very nice line. Oh, sorry, I forgot I'm a little bit closer to this than I think I am sometimes. Anyways, it creates a much more linear line from the hook, from the head of the fly to the hook, instead of being a little bit up like that, which I think just kind of makes a weird hook set, and sometimes you miss fish. So there is the Studler, and of course, you can pick up both varieties at Umpqua dealers near you. Thanks so much for being out there and watching. And I really appreciate your time. And any questions, you can hit me up at Millsly on Instagram, or I'm sure any of the Umpqua communication channels, social media channels, and we'll get your questions answered. Have a great day.